side, right? So I have a texture, I have carving, and now, where's my clay? There we go. And now, I'm gonna add something to it. I'm gonna add a leaf, make a lovely little leaf. So I'll take a little piece of clay here, I'll flatten it, and I'll carve out a leaf. There you go. Perfect. Does it look like a leaf?
No.
No, that's a leaf. That's a leaf. That's a slab. It's not a leaf yet, right? I gotta make it look like a leaf. I'm making sculpture. Try not to do slab on slab. It's sort of your first inclination because we're so used to the world being flat. Flat screens, flat papers, everything's flat. But now we get to be 3D. So instead, I'm gonna actually push this in my hand like this, and I'm gonna curve it by pushing it into my hand. Anytime you stretch clay, if you can push it into itself as opposed to actually stretching it, it's gonna be stronger. And now I'm just rounding that bottom part of the edge so it appears that this is a thin piece of clay. I don't really want a tiny thin piece of clay. If I had clay as thin as a leaf, it would be super fragile and hard to work with. But by thinning that edge and rounding it a little bit, it appears thin. It fools the eye. So I do that, and now maybe I'll add some detail or some texture. So I have it rounded a little bit. Let's make that come to a little more of a point. I'm gonna take, I like the pointy spoon. You can get a nice cut that way. And you can slide little crumbs of clay or little nards of clay out of there. There we go. And I'm not doing a whole lot, but just by adding a little bit of a detail or a texture to it. And this is pretty soft clay. Your clay will be more leather hard, so you can capture your detail a little better. So I now have just a little bit of detail. I have a thin edge. I've curved it a little bit. And I'm gonna see the back of this because I've curved it. So I also need to put my texture on the back. I can't forget about it. I'm making sculpture. I'm making a 3D object. So I'll see that. So I'm gonna put these little marks on the back too. All right. Now, if I take this and attach it to my, in theory, attach it to my tree, and I would do a little more work with this to kind of make it look like it's actually sitting on the tree, but just to give you an idea. Now is it a leaf?
Yeah.
Now it looks like a leaf. And it's subtle, but little things like edges and textures make a big difference. So now to attach this, I'm going to just mark where it sits on the side. And my rule of thumb is if about a half of it sits on there, 2/3 maybe, this is about halfway on the side, so I know it's gonna stay. If you only have like a quarter of something hanging off, attaching to your side, it doesn't always stay real well. And this is leather hard, my box, right? And what stage is this in? Plastic, very good. So I'm asking clay in 2 different stages to bond together. So I've got to be careful that I make that wetness level come together as best I can. So I get a little bit of slip on here. I might put a little water on there too, just so that they all kind of mesh together. Now, I didn't hear a lot of scoochies when you guys are putting your sides on, so I hope your boxes stay together, but I would recommend it for the details. Scoochie. Oh, and I can feel it. I can already feel it grabbing it, so that's a good sign. I squished my texture a little bit, or my details. I'll put those back in. Maybe I'll bring this in like something like that. But now, do you see how that's way more interesting than a line? And you wouldn't think about it, but I've really used all the surface techniques. I have carving, I have texture, I have score and slip. So those are 3 of the 4.